Chapter 9. GD looked puzzled. He had expected Constance to find what she was looking for quickly. Now, at midday on the morning of her discharge from hospital, after more than 3 hours of work, they had both failed to find anything about Daniel Clark. "Let's go and get something to eat," Constance suggested. "I only want a sandwich," GD told her. They went to a trailer parked on open ground. It was an old caravan that had been turned into a place selling drinks and food. They chose sandwiches. Constance liked cheese and tomato. GD chose something with meat in it. They also bought 2 cans of drinks. Then they went to sit down on a bench in a nearby park. It was not a large public park, just a small green space in the middle of the city. "What are we going to do next?" GD asked. Constance shook her head sadly. There were 2 reasons for this. First, she did not really know where to search next. Second, GD was proving to be worse than useless. He had contributed nothing all morning. Lai was like a little dog following her about. He had no useful function. She would have moved faster without him. On the one occasion when she needed help, when she was in Mrs. Clark's house in Hillside, GD had not been there. That was not his fault, however. He'd been needed in the office. Nor had Constance needed to go to the house. In a sense, it was really her fault that she had been attacked. Except that people should not enter houses uninvited, and when discovered, they ought not to become violent. In fact, all morning Constance had found it hard to concentrate on the search. One thought kept coming back to her. One question. One important question. Why did the thief steal the photographs from the metal box? Constance considered sending GD back to the office. There wasn't anything for him to do. It was daytime. She did not need a guard. She did not need anyone to protect her. As a messenger, as someone to collect and post letters, GD was fine. He was a decent guy, Constance thought, yet limited in what he was able to do because of his lack of intelligence. Really, would you? GD. He had closed his eyes. "Sorry," he said, as he opened his eyes and yawned. "I usually sleep at lunchtime." "You do? Where?" "On the grass. A little place near the office," GD said. Is that wrong?" "No, of course not," she reassured him. "It seems like a good idea. When I was a student, I sometimes went to sleep in the afternoon. Then I was able to work in the evening, till very late. I'd do the same now, if I could. It's too hot to work in the afternoon." "We have the air conditioning on," Constance said. "That keeps the office cool." "Yes, but I have to cycle to the post office," he said. GD yawned again. "Perhaps, would you like to go back to the office?" she asked him. GD shook his head. "No way," he replied. "Then perhaps, would you like to go home?" "Home?" he asked. "Sure. I won't tell anyone. But I was told to help you," he reminded her. Constance passed her hand across her mouth to hold back a yawn. She was giving him a chance to take the afternoon off. She wanted to get rid of him for a few hours. Lai was useless. She would work faster without him tagging along. No, GD said, looking determined. "I'm staying with you, Constance. I'm going to take care of you." "And who," she thought, "will take care of you?" "GD, let's go," Constance said. She stood up. "Do you like ice cream?" GD asked her. "I love it," Constance replied. "Let me buy 2 ice creams," GD said. "Wait for me, here." GD walked across the grass and onto the road. On the spare ground, near to the sandwich place, there was a van and someone selling ice cream. Constance watched GD as he went. He must be a lonely person, she thought. He did not seem the kind of person who makes friends easily. He was not married. There was never any talk of girlfriends. Constance shook her head and sighed. In this world, in large cities, there are many lonely and unhappy people. She sat down on the bench. As she did so, 4 youths approached her. They were behaving in a noisy way, jumping about and dancing. 2 of them sat down on the bench. One put his arm round Constance's shoulder. "Hi, baby," he said. Constance tried to shake herself free of his arm. "Come back to my place," the youth said. His friends laughed loudly and foolishly. A second youth sat down at the other side of Constance. He picked up her briefcase and threw it to a third youth. "Hey! Give me back my briefcase," Constance shouted. She tried to stand up, but the 2 either side of her held her shoulders firmly. Constance was very angry. It was the middle of the day. There were many people around, and yet nobody showed any sign of wanting to help her. She had read about such things. There was one time when a young woman was attacked in daylight, right here in the city center, by a gang of youths. They had beaten the woman and left her for dead. Not a single person tried to interfere in order to protect her. People were too frightened of the gang. Well, people might be afraid, but Constance was not afraid. The only emotion that she felt was great anger. She struggled to get free. One of the youths kissed her on her cheek. The other tried to kiss her on the lips. "Leave me alone," Constance said, with disgust. "Take your filthy hands off me." "Filthy hands," a youth repeated. "You tell me I have filthy hands." He held his hands up. The others laughed loudly. "Come on, baby," another youth said. He took hold of Constance's arm and dragged her to her feet. "Let's find a nice place, sis," another one said, taking hold of Constance's other arm. This was crazy. Were people blind? Have we become afraid of foolish youths who roam the streets giving trouble to respectable young women and girls? "Will somebody please help me?" Constance shouted out. One of the youths holding her tried to place a hand over her mouth. She tried to bite him. It sparked off the memory of the attack earlier in the week. Except that now there were 4 aggressors, and there were other people about. "Take your hands off her." The youths were stopped by somebody with the courage to speak. Constance was pleased to see that it was GD. In either hand he carried an ice cream cone. Well, a youth said, adopting an American accent. "If it ain't the man with the ice cream." "Gimme an ice cream," another said, dancing in front of GD and trying to take a cone from him. "Okay," GD said. Then, moving very quickly, GD stepped forward and pushed the ice cream into the youth's face. Another youth drew his arm back, preparing to hit GD. The messenger lifted an arm to hold off the blow, stepped in close, and hit the youth hard in the lower part of the body. The youth gasped and his knees became weak. GD's arm swung and his fist caught the youth on the jaw. Constance now moved herself. She broke free from the 2 youths holding her. She hit one in his ribs with her elbow. She tried to kick the other on his ankles. At the same time, GD was dealing with another youth. Constance was able to see everything clearly. GD stood up straight, protecting his face and body from blows, yet waiting for a chance to strike. His chance came soon. The youth came in close. GD caught him in the ribs and followed the blow with another on the guy's right arm. The arm fell down. His face was open. GD hit the guy in the face many times. Blood poured down the youth's face. It all seemed to be over very quickly. 3 youths were running away, a 4th lay in his own blood on the ground, and Constance had picked up her briefcase. GD stood straight, proud that he had been able to protect Constance, to save her from further harassment. A small crowd had gathered. The same people who had failed to assist Constance now clapped and cheered GD. "Thanks, GD," Constance said. "You were great." "No problem," GD replied. The 4th youth was on his feet. GD held him in a firm grip. What do we do? GD asked. We take him to the police. Constance said. There are always questions to answer and forms to complete. A visit to the police station is never easy. Altogether, the business took about 2 hours. A police officer asked Constance if she wanted to press charges against the youth. Constance said that she did. He must learn his lesson. He could not act in the way he and his friends acted that day. GD and Constance spent some time looking at photographs of young men known to the police as troublemakers. The aim was to see if they recognized any of the 3 other youths. They failed in this search. Never mind, the officer said. The one we are holding will tell us the names of his friends. At one point, Constance and GD were left together in a small room. You were great this afternoon, GD, Constance said. Thanks, he replied, shyly. Just like a boxer, Constance said. Straight and tough. I used to box a little, GD said. You're good, Constance told him. Why did you give it up? People were hitting me. It was becoming painful. He smiled as he admitted, I suppose I was getting older and slower. Tell that to the 4 guys in town. Tell that to the one in the cells. There was blood everywhere. His blood, GD said happily. Constance laughed with him. Yet she was serious in her thoughts. At the very time when she had been thinking that GD was useless, and was going to get rid of him, she had been taught an important lesson. Different people have different skills, different talents. Because a man is not a lawyer, because he's a messenger, does not mean he lacks skills or intelligence. When all the paperwork had been completed, and it was time for them to leave, Constance and GD were told that they would be informed about the next moves. Then the young officer surprised Constance by asking if he could talk to her in private. Sure, she said. There's an empty room here, the young officer said. They went into an interview room. My name is Samuel, the officer said. I want to study law. You study law as part of your police training, don't you? Constance asked. That is true, Samuel replied. But I wish to become a lawyer like you. He had learned this fact when completing the forms. Perhaps I can help you, Constance said. She talked to him for quite a long time, giving him advice, explaining the courses at the university, and telling him what kind of work was available after qualification as a lawyer. Samuel was very pleased. Thank you, Constance, he said, smiling happily. If I can help you, anything, ask me. Well, Constance replied, there is something you could do, Samuel. If you'll agree. Anything, Samuel said. I said so just now. But this may not be legal, Constance told him. Now Samuel was no longer smiling. What do you want? He asked. After thinking for a time. Information, Constance replied. Can you check your records, Sam? We have computers now, he replied proudly. Can you use them? Constance asked. Sure, IT, information technology. It's part of our course. I want to know if you have records about a white guy, Constance said. Lamlangu. Samuel said, surprised. In connection with the case, Constance explained. And added, when you become a lawyer yourself, Sam, you'll deal with people from different races. This pleased the young officer. He already had in his mind many dreams of standing in court and making famous speeches in important trials. Why do you need to find this guy? Constance smiled. She had said the light things to gain Samuel's confidence and trust. His mother has just died. And you need to find him quickly, Sam said. So that he can attend her funeral, Constance explained. I don't think there will be a problem, Samuel replied. Probably isn't even illegal. We are both in the same business, Constance told him, smiling brightly. What is the guy's name? Clark, C-L-A-R-K. Daniel. Daniel Clark.